In Mortal Kombat lore, Zaterra is the surrogate realm of Reptile's race, a distant world where the reptilian species settled after being driven out of Earthrealm, the native home of their ancestors, the result of a war between the gods that nearly drove the species extinct. The survivors would escape the ravaged lands of Earthrealm, likely through dimensional portals, and would settle on a new, foreign, previously undiscovered world, far from the eyes and ears of the Major Six. They dubbed this realm Zaterra, or New Earth. There, they evolved into the Zaterrans we know today, most notably Reptile and the two chameleons. When it comes to the original Earthborn strain of the species and what they looked like, we can only speculate. Did they resemble their contemporary counterparts, or were they wildly different, going through a much more primitive stage of their evolution compared to modern reptiles? Given the multiple millennia gap between the two, the latter seems more likely. Not only that, but if ancient reptiles were as evolved and as dangerous as their modern counterparts, it's safe to assume that they wouldn't have been driven out of their native realm that easily. Given their abilities, an organized army of Zaterrans would be virtually unstoppable, something we'll come back to a little later. So we can consider the Earthrealm strain to be a sort of proto-reptilian race, a precursor to modern reptiles, but who, nonetheless, likely possessed impressive abilities, since a few thousand years wouldn't be enough to evolve everything from scratch, so the core genome of the saurian race had already been established. The most noteworthy evolutionary strides, however, were made on Zaterra. It's hard to speculate what the realm looked like before its destruction. Mortal Kombat Conquest offers brief glimpses into what Zaterra might have been. A fairly inhospitable backwater with a cold, wet climate where the rain never stopped, so basically the UK. But even this was after Shao Kahn had conquered and enslaved the population. It's difficult to say whether this is what the realm always looked like, or if its current state is the result of a long and brutal war, perhaps followed by Shao Kahn stripping it of its resources and keeping the populace vulnerable and dependent on him, something that would be very much in line with his MO. And the reptiles in the show do speak of returning Zaterra to its former glory, whatever that means, so there is that. But I would like to propose that, invasion or no, Zaterra was always a harsh environment to live in. The reptiles themselves are proof of this. Evolution is a powerful weapon, leading to impressive developments like venomous snakes, massive mammoths, killer sharks with auto-replacing teeth, and crocodiles that have endured since the era of the dinosaurs. But Zaterran reptiles are in a league of their own. A reptile's camouflage, its shapeshifting ability, and its acidic secretions are extreme evolutionary adaptations that would only occur in the deadliest, most challenging of environments to a species whose genetic capabilities permitted it. The speed and cloaking ability of these creatures are both indicative of extremely dangerous predators, highly elusive prey, or both. Their acid spit is likely a set of chemicals, including overpotent stomach acid that, when combined, become highly caustic, capable of melting through steel. This kind of extreme adaptation is only necessary if the kind of prey you're hunting is protected by an extremely tough carapace. Zaterran fauna, it seems, was no joke. The acid could also be an adaptation to intraspecies warfare, but reptiles' hides aren't that tough, so that hypothesis makes little sense. Despite their scales, the overall durability of a Zaterran is on par with your average outworld denizen, perhaps even comparable to an especially tough Earthrealmer. Reptilians get by on their speed, stealth, and ability to deal obscene amounts of damage quickly, not their toughness or endurance. But by far their most fascinating ability is their shape-shifting. Regardless of the specific adaptation or iteration, reptiles always have some limited form of shape-shifting, be it switching between humanoid and reptilian forms, mutating into a mini kaiju, or impersonating others like the chameleon strain does. And that last one has a boatload of implications. This kind of ability wouldn't evolve in their natural environment. It wouldn't need to. They don't impersonate themselves or copy their own abilities. Everyone has the same abilities. And whatever other species they shared their realm with were likely non-humanoid, definitely not as advanced or sophisticated as them. No, this ability evolved extra-dimensionally through interaction with other humanoids and used for infiltration, impersonation, espionage, and sabotage. Now, of course, not all of this was purely evolution. Copying abilities at a glance, even magical ones, is obviously a pretty supernatural thing. That's where the power system stuff comes into play. But even so, it would take many generations to achieve mastery of such powers, and it would take many targets from many realms to hone these skills. Which means Zaterra was, at one point, an expansionist realm. They would infiltrate other realms, be it for prey, for sport, or to destabilize entire governments. They were conquerors. And that brings us to today's question. What would have happened if Zaterra was never conquered? If Shao Kahn hadn't subjugated the realm, enslaved its people, and eventually chose to commit genocide, mass murdering all but one? By the way, the fact that our good emperor liquidated a race of highly evolved T-1000s that could have no doubt been useful in his conquests is a testament to how dangerous they were. Useful though they may be, trying to tame a race of people that could come and go unseen, impersonate anyone, copy any ability, and kill you with a sneeze was bound to end poorly. Shao Kahn had the foresight to see that, so he likely took no chances. This checks out with the conquest version of events. The aforementioned TV show is set in a time when reptiles were but enslaved, not fully wiped out. And even though we don't see this happen, the events in that show likely convinced that version of Shao to do what I just mentioned. Stop taking chances and murder the lot of them. Now, if Zaterrans had never been discovered, nor had they traveled to other realms on their own, obviously nothing would have happened. No one would have known of their existence, and they would have stuck to their wet little rock, snacking bugs and tripping balls. But that's obviously not the case. The chameleon branch implies a whole history of studying, copying, and presumably preying on other humanoid species. So let's think about this. If Shao had never conquered them, maybe he was too busy sodomizing other realms, and if Zaterran military and leadership were solid, the results could be potentially catastrophic for other realms. Bonus points if those other realms are either oblivious to Zaterra or just stopped keeping tabs on it. Your run-of-the-mill reptile, through efficient use of its cloaking, spitting, and zany abilities, can cause enough damage as it is. But if you militarize enough chameleons and use them well, you can conquer entire realms given enough time. Through their advanced shapeshifting, chameleons can impersonate literally anyone to an almost imperceptible degree, copying their mannerisms, their skills, their powers, everything. Planting a few such agents in key positions of power within a realm's government, you can weaken that government, partially demilitarize its standing army, incite rebellion, cause a civil war, turn two realms against each other and destroy both once they're weakened. More chillingly, given their highly adaptable physiology, it's highly likely that these shape-shifting human-lizard hybrids could intermingle and breed with many humanoid populations, the results of which would be disastrous in time. If given the chance to mature, this new generation of half-reptilian hybrids would act as sleeper agents that could steadily take over a nation's entire infrastructure. Absolute compliance of the new hybrids wouldn't be essential, as their mere existence would eventually lead to prejudice, infighting, and an eventual civil war, the effects of which we've already discussed. Given even more time, the combined reptile infiltrators and hybrids would eventually outnumber the general population, having manipulated public opinion, provoked brutal infighting and massive casualties, split cities and nations into paranoid enemies out to get each other, all while silently dispatching anyone who might uncover and challenge one of them. Which is the other thing. Chameleons are high up in the power hierarchy. I'm not gonna go over every nook and cranny of their powers and limitations, because I already did that here, but they're essentially soul stealers without the stealing part. A bit more limited in scope, but still. Imagine an army of Shang Tsungs with none of the downsides of being Shang Tsung. No soul addiction, no need to extract a person's soul to use their abilities. You can just copy them instantly the way Plastic Man copies your homework, or peeks under your skirt. He is the skirt. No matter how strong the opponent, the chameleon is just as strong. They're the ultimate boss killers, which is a frightening thought all on its own. This means that the only way to reliably beat them is in large-scale battles, where you can blow them to kingdom come with artillery or magic, except again, chameleons wouldn't engage in conventional warfare unless absolutely necessary. They're much better in a shadow war, assassinating their way to success. And regular reptiles are no slouches either. They're pretty good in an all-out skirmish, and almost as good as the chameleons at killing single bosses. Their cloaking, their speed, and their one-touch kill acid is the trifecta that could technically kill a tank. Oh, and one other thing. Reptiles live a long time. The one reptile we know is ancient. He's been around so long he probably doesn't even remember how old he is. which is another reason why these raptors are incentivized to take their time and play the long game. Invest few resources, steadily take over unsuspecting realms over several generations, and by the time these worlds and nations figure out what's happening, they've already lost. Taking your time ensures your realm and your involvement stays secret, minimizes risk, and makes this a very peculiar, understated kind of war that's hard to fight. Being so long-lived allows you to plan a very long game that few can play. As for the strategy, Outworld and Edenia would probably be saved for last. Engaging such realms would be highly risky because of all the magical bullshit that could make such a campaign backfire. Sorcerers, spells, shadow priests, ever-watchful protector gods like Argus, who by the way in Greek mythology was a multi-eyed, ever-vigilant giant, the endless hordes of the Khan, not to mention his over-preparedness that borders on paranoia, his genius tactical mind, as well as just how difficult he himself would be to take down, even by a group of chameleons. All this makes saving these two realms for dessert the most foolproof strategy. In the meantime, you can slowly dismantle other weaker realms and eventually incite conflict with these final two targets as kind of a massive diversion and to whittle them down. Oh, and as for the Elder Gods and their little rules, this isn't a merger of realms. It isn't even a formal invasion. Assassination of a few individuals at a time is not punishable by the gods. They do not care. In truth, they probably wouldn't even notice. So there's no need to play their little ping-pong tournament. The end result would be that all these realms would still technically be independent, but practically speaking, they'd be low-key subjugated. Conquest hidden in plain sight. I've spent a lot of time talking about war and conquest, but is it certain that Zaterra would opt for this path? Unfortunately, yes, for two reasons. One, with such power at your disposal, the temptation would eventually be just too high. No longer would they be content to just snack on the odd unsuspecting victim, steal some resources here and there. When you know you can do so much more and there's nothing to stop you, you will take that opportunity eventually. And history has shown that this is the case more or less every time. But even if you choose to be peaceful, well, peaceful for them, if your realm is ever discovered and studied, people will eventually attack you and force you to defend yourself. Because let's keep it real, no one could trust a race of invisible shapeshifters. Sooner or later, conflict would arrive at Zaterra's door, and that leads to the same scenario of all-out war. Imagine this Elseworlds tale where Reptile fully adopts Earthrealm as his new home, poses as a human, he befriends Sub-Zero, he befriends the Special Forces and acts as a useful agent to help clean the streets of crime, defend the realm from threats both alien and domestic. One day he has a special operation to oversee and he invites Sub-Zero there to catch up and watch the proceedings, except that operation turns out to be assassinating the president or some shit. And it slowly dawns on Sub that they are not friends. Reptile has been breeding a personal army and planting them everywhere as spies and hitmen, Tyler Durden style, surreptitiously eliminating anything and anyone that could stand in their way. And he's like, yo, wait a minute. Let's just think about bro, you don't need to do this. Yes, I very much will do this. And left with no choice and hoping to use the element of surprise, with the speed of a wildcat, Sub-Zero shoots ice spikes at Reptile. Yet they stop right in front of him, hovering in midair. To Sub-Zero's horror, it turns out that everyone in the room was a reptilian, sons and daughters of Zaterra, and two of them were chameleons. Having copied Sub-Zero's powers as soon as he arrived, they easily stopped the spikes before they could harm Daddy Reptile. Any attack was now futile. The green men are now among us, and we never saw them coming. Inspired by a chilling scene from Stargate SG-1 that always stuck with me. Season 4, Episode 17, highly recommend. Zaterra's death was no accident. Whenever two dominant species of comparable power levels are brought together, one of them wins and the other perishes. Had reptiles not gone near extinct, most of us would have. So perhaps there's a reason why Zaterra's dead, and why most of us should want to keep it that way.